Okay, so in this section we're going to discuss the rules for adding and subtracting numbers. But I want to do a couple of vocabulary things before we start, because it's going to be things that I'm using a lot during this section. So the first thing we want to talk about is what a term is. And a term is any number, a variable, or a product, which is multiplication. It could also be, we can also talk about division later, but a product of a number and variables. All right, and then, so these are examples. So 34 would be a term, -7 would be a term, x times y, because it's a product, they're together, would be a term. 4 times z, that would be a term of itself. One thing I'm going to really hammer on, terms have value either positive or negative. All right, and problems that you normally see, we can start to see them as separate terms. So if I see something like, you will see 5 minus 4, I want you to be able to visualize it as the term a positive 5 and a negative 4. And then when we combine them, what we're going to be doing in this section, when we're combining terms, that will make some more sense with the rules that are involved. Another word that you're going to hear is a constant, and what that is a term. A constant is a term without a variable or a number by itself. So 34 would be a constant, -7 would be a constant, these would not be. All right, it's something that is not being affected by a variable if I multiply by it, so it stays the same. Okay, so rules for adding and subtracting numbers. So we can type this directly in our calculator and it'll give us the right answer, but I want to try to simplify things for you guys, because as we get to ones where we can't type in our calculator, when we have terms that include variables, we're not going to be able to use the calculator for it. So I like to say always merge double signs. And what I mean by that, if we go left to right and we see two signs that are next to each other, not separated by a number, then we can merge those signs into one sign and then rewrite that problem with just one sign. So if anytime I have signs that are different, a positive and a negative, that's always going to be a negative. So those two will become this one. Anytime I see two that are same, such as two negatives, they will always become a positive. So in this example, I have a positive and a negative. We can rewrite these two to become just that one negative. So 4 plus a -6 would be a 4 and a -6 next to each other, but you can read it as 4 minus 6. Over here we have -7 minus a -12, so it's the opposite of -12. Those two, because they're the same, will become a positive. So in these problems, if you want to pause this, practice merging these terms. I'm going to go ahead and do them, and then you can unpause and see if you got them right. So in this we have two negatives. If you look up at our notes, negative is that positive, so this would be 4 plus 5. And again, I don't want the answer, I just want to see them merge the signs. So here we have a -4 plus a -3. They're different, so that would be -4 minus 3. Here, -4 minus 4, 6 plus 7. There's no change there because there's no double signs. Okay, once we get efficient at merging the signs and simplifying problems that way, then we can talk about the rules for adding and subtracting integers. All right, so here's the first rule. If the signs of the integers are the same, meaning they're either both positive or both negative, you add the numbers and keep the common sign. So 7, this is a positive 7, and every time there's no indication of whether it's positive or negative, we assume it's positive. 7 and a 3, it's 10, so our answer is 10. -4, -2, you can see that they're both negative, so 4 plus 2 is 6, but we keep the sign as 6. So looking at these, we should already be able to tell like which one's going to be positive, which one's going to be negative. There's two positives, two negatives, two negatives. So the negatives are going to be negatives, the positives are going to be positives, so we just add them together. Since there's two positives, 5 plus 8, that would be just positive 13. 6 plus 2, that would be 8. Now that's very basic because this is where you first started with math, but understand that they're both positive, so we're combining them. So the same rule applies when they're both negatives. I have a 6 and a 10, that's 16, but since they're both negatives, it's a negative 16. So you're just adding them and keeping the common sign. 11 plus 9 is 20. Since they're both negatives, it's negative 20. All right, now, that's when the signs of the terms are both the same. Now, if they're different, we take the difference. So we basically subtract the bigger number from the smaller number, and then we attach the sign of the, quote, bigger number. So like what I mean by that, if you look at this one, there's a positive 5 and a negative 9. Even though the negative 9 is smaller in value, like 9 is bigger than 5. That's what I mean by bigger number. So the difference between 9 and 5 is 4. The bigger number 9, the negative goes with it. Over here, again, the difference between 5 and 9 is 4, but the bigger number is now positive, so our answer is positive. All right, so over here, we have a difference. Count up from 5 to 8, 5, 6, 7, 8, so that's 3. The bigger number is 8, so we know it's going to be negative. Here, the bigger number is 6, so we know my answer is going to be positive. And obviously, what's the difference between 6 and 2? And that's 4. Over here, we have a negative and a positive, so they're different signs. The difference between 6 and 10 is 4. The bigger number is 10, which is positive, so it's a positive 4. Over here, I have an 11 and a 9. Difference between 11 and a 9, because again, this is a positive 11, would be 2. The bigger number is 11, so it would again be positive 2. So that's the rule with adding and subtracting integers like that. So here's a couple examples. So now we're putting it all together. So the first step is to merge the signs, and then the second step is to then do the math and apply those rules. So if I have 5 minus a negative 9, I see two signs. I can rewrite that as 5 plus 9. Now I have two positives, positive 5, positive 9, so we just add and keep the common sign. So that would be 14, positive 14. Over here, there's a sign, a number, sign, sign, number. So since these are together, I'm going to merge those. Negative 5 minus 3, and again, I'm subtracting, changing that to a minus because they're different, right? Whenever they're the same, they're plus. Whenever they're different, they're minus. So now I have two terms that are negative. So we add the numbers and keep the common sign, just like we did over here. Two positives, two negatives, add them, keep the common sign. So this will be 8 with a negative. All right, over here, first step is to merge the signs. You can see the two right next to each other. Some kids just do this. They just make that a plus when they see that. It's like, oh, look, I just did that. So this will be negative 10 plus 10. So obviously they're two different signs. So what is the difference between 10 and 10? The difference is 0. There would be no positive or negative associated with that. Let's do one more sample problem that would give us a negative number. So if I have let's do negative 10 minus negative 12. All right, so again, we have two signs. They're going to become positive. Negative 10 plus 12. So now that they're different signs, the difference between 10 and 12 is 2. And the bigger number is a positive, right? Because this one's a negative, this one's a positive. So it just remains positive.